Lieutenant Commander Jin rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of his cold coffee. He had been staring at the monitoring screens for 12 hours straight, but something about tonight felt different. The Luna Deep Space Array usually picked up nothing but cosmic background noise and the occasional asteroid ping. Tonight, something was crying out from the darkness. Between stars, the first signal hit his console at 0347 hours. Jin almost dismissed it as equipment malfunction until the pattern repeated. Then again, and again. Each time, the signal grew stronger and more desperate. "Me, get over here," Jin called to his partner. "Tell me I'm not going crazy." Specialist Mi rolled her chair over, her black hair falling across her face as she leaned toward the display. Her fingers moved quickly across the holographic controls, isolating the signal and running it through every translation program they had. "Holy shit," she whispered, then caught herself. "Sorry, sir. It's just ... This is incredible. These aren't random signals. Someone is broadcasting a message, and they're using mathematics to make it universal." The computer worked for 20 minutes, slowly piecing together fragments of alien language. When the first partial translation appeared on screen, both humans went silent. Mi's hands actually shook as she read the words aloud. "Help us. Our worlds burn. The swarm comes. We have no weapons. We have no warriors. Please, any who can hear this, our children are dying." Jin felt his stomach drop. The signals kept coming, dozens of them from different locations. Each one told the same story. An entire species was screaming into the void, begging anyone in the universe to save them from something they called the Void Swarm. The aliens called themselves Zephyrians. From what Jin and Mi could understand, they had never known war. They had never needed to fight. Their ships were built for exploration and beauty, not battle. Now something was hunting them across multiple star systems, eating their worlds, and they had no idea how to stop it. "Sir," Mi said quietly, "the signals are getting weaker. Some of the transmission sources have gone completely silent in the last few hours." Jin's hands moved without thought, opening a direct communication line to Earth Defense Command. Admiral Park would want to know about this immediately. "Ma'am?" he said when Park answered. "We have a situation. There's an alien species under attack, and they're asking for help. From anyone. From us." Park's voice was sharp and alert despite the early hour. "How long do they have?" Jin looked at the fading signals on his screen. "Days, maybe less." "Get me everything you have," Park ordered, "and prepare a full briefing. If this is real, we might be someone's only hope." The emergency session began at dawn, in the underground bunkers beneath Geneva. 27 of Earth's most powerful leaders sat around a circular table, their faces grim as Admiral Park finished presenting the alien distress signals. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of air recyclers. Defense Minister Wu was the first to speak. "We're talking about committing our entire military to help complete strangers. For all we know, this could be an elaborate trap. Maybe these aliens are testing our defenses before they attack us." General Han slammed his fist on the table. "Listen to yourself, Wu. We have recordings of entire planets going silent. Children crying for help in languages we barely understand. This isn't some military strategy. This is genocide happening right now while we sit here worried about politics." Colonel So, a small woman with silver hair, activated the holographic display in the center of the room. Alien voices filled the chamber, translated into dozen different human languages. Even through the computer translation, the desperation was clear. "I've spent my entire career studying potential alien contact scenarios," So said quietly. "These transmission patterns show no deception markers. The mathematical structures they're using to communicate are too complex to fake. More importantly, the linguistic analysis shows these beings have no words for war, weapons, or military strategy. They literally don't understand how to fight. President Chen rubbed his forehead. Even if we wanted to help, how do we know we can make a difference? We've never fought aliens before. We don't know what we're up against. That's exactly why we might succeed, Admiral Park replied, standing up slowly. Every other species that's encountered this void swarm has been peaceful. They think like diplomats and scientists. We think like survivors from a world that's tried to kill us for millions of years. The debate continued for another 10 minutes. But everyone in the room could feel the momentum shifting. These weren't politicians making calculated decisions anymore. These were human beings listening to cries for help from across the galaxy. When the vote came, it was unanimous. Admiral Park's voice was steady as she gave the order that would change human history. Authorization code 77. Fleets, all personnel, immediate mobilization. We're going to war. Within an hour, alerts flashed across every military base on Earth and its colonies. Marines grabbed their gear. Pilots ran to their fighters. Ship crews powered up engines that hadn't been used in months. Humanity was about to announce itself to the galaxy in the only way it knew how, by standing up for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. The alien distress calls were still coming in, but now they wouldn't go unanswered. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching through the massive view screen as humanity's greatest fleet came together. Luna Station had never seen anything like this. 200 warships of every size and class surrounded the moon, their engines creating a constellation of blue and white flames against the black of space. The sight took his breath away. Massive dreadnoughts longer than city blocks floated, alongside sleek destroyers and nimble fighter craft. Supply ships loaded with ammunition and medical supplies moved between them like busy worker bees. Every few minutes, another ship would drop out of hyperspace to join the growing armada. "Commander Hai, give me the numbers," Lee said, though he could barely believe what he was seeing. Hai checked her tablet, her expression serious. 50,000 personnel across all vessels, sir. That includes 20,000 Marines, 8,000 pilots, 5,000 engineers, and the rest split between medical teams, support staff, and command crew. Every single person volunteered when they heard what we were doing. Lee shook his head in amazement. When word had spread about the alien distress call, military bases across Earth and the colonies had been flooded with volunteers. Retired veterans came out of retirement. Civilians with technical skills applied for emergency commissions. Even teenagers tried to lie about their age to join up. Major Yoon's voice came through the communication system from the marine staging area deep in the ship's belly. "Captain, we're as ready as we'll ever be. My Marines have been training non-stop for 3 days. We've modified all our armor for vacuum combat in case we have to fight inside damaged ships. Weapons are calibrated for unknown alien hostiles, and we've loaded up on every type of ammunition we could think of." "What about refugee capacity?" Lee asked. "We've converted cargo bays across the fleet into temporary living spaces. Basic life support, food, medical facilities. We can handle about 2 million civilians if we pack them in tight. It won't be comfortable, but it'll keep them alive." Lee nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. 50,000 humans were about to travel across the galaxy to fight an enemy they'd never seen, to save aliens they'd never met. They were doing it not for profit or conquest, but simply because someone had asked for help. "Signal all ships," he commanded, his voice carrying across the fleet's communication network. "This is Captain Lee. We're about to show the galaxy what humanity stands for. Every species out there is watching to see what kind of people we are. Let's make sure they remember." 3 weeks into their journey across the galaxy, the human fleet raced through the darkness between stars. Dr. Yoon had barely left her laboratory since they'd entered hyperspace, surviving on coffee and determination as she worked to decode more Zephyrian transmissions. Every day brought clearer translations and more terrifying news. The xenobiology lab aboard the Defiant looked like a war room. Holographic displays covered every wall, showing alien script, audio waveforms, and grainy images intercepted from Zephyrian broadcasts. Dr. Yoon's eyes were bloodshot from staring at screens, but she couldn't stop. Each new translation revealed another piece of the puzzle. "Captain Lee, you need to get down here immediately," she called through the intercom, her voice shaking. Lee arrived to find the lab's main display showing something that made his blood run cold. Elegant beings with crystalline skin that glowed, with soft light, were running in terror through what looked like living crystal cities. The Zephyrians were tall and graceful, moving like dancers even in their panic. "Look at this footage," Yoon said, pointing to the hologram. "This is from their capital world. These aren't just refugees, Captain. These are the survivors of a civilization that has existed for 50,000 years without ever fighting a war." Lee watched as the alien beings helped each other escape, carrying their young and elderly. Even in their terror, they moved with gentleness and care. No weapons. None. They don't even have words for military concepts in their language. When they try to describe what's happening to them, they have to use terms like the darkness that eats light and the hunger that cannot be filled. They literally cannot understand violence the way we do. Engineer O's voice crackled over the ship's communication system from the engine room. "Captain, I'm pushing our hyperspace drives 20% beyond safe limits. The engines are screaming, but we'll make it. Just got another transmission from Zephyrian space. They've lost 4 more colonies in the past week." Lee clenched his fists. Each lost colony meant billions of dead aliens. Beautiful, peaceful beings who had never hurt anyone were being slaughtered while humanity raced desperately through space to reach them. "How much longer?" he asked. 4 days, Ah replied. "Maybe 3 if I can squeeze more power from the reactors." Dr. Yoon pulled up another display showing the progression of attacks. "Captain, at this rate, there might not be any Zephyrians left to save by the time we arrive." Lee stared at the images of the dying alien civilization. Somewhere ahead, in the darkness, an entire species was crying out for help, and humanity was their only hope. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace like thunder breaking the silence of night. 200 warships materialized at the edge of Zephyrian space, their engines blazing and weapon systems automatically scanning for threats. What they found instead was chaos of a different kind. Thousands of Zephyrian refugee ships filled the void, fleeing toward the outer system. These weren't the metal warships humans were used to seeing. The alien vessels looked like they had been grown rather than built, with smooth organic curves and surfaces that shimmered like Mother UV. They were beautiful, but fragile looking, more like works of art than spacecraft. The moment the human fleet appeared, panic spread through the refugee convoy. Alien ships scattered in every direction, clearly terrified by the sudden appearance of Earth's battle-hardened warships. 2 beings who had never seen military vessels before. The human fleet must have looked like floating fortresses bristling with weapons. "Commander." Young watched from her shuttle as it approached one of the larger Zephyrian transports. "Easy approach," she told her pilot. "We don't want to scare them more than we already have." The alien ship was 3 times the size of her shuttle but looked impossibly delicate. Its hull pulsed with soft light patterns that seemed to shift and change like a living heartbeat. When the shuttle docked, Young felt like she was entering some kind of living organism rather than a machine. The corridors inside were made of what looked like living crystal, glowing with warm light that came from the walls themselves. The air smelled like flowers and ozone. Young had seen a lot of strange things in her military career, but this was like stepping into a fairy tale. The Zephyrians they found were huddled together in what must have been their main gathering space. They were tall and graceful, with pale skin that glowed from within like captured starlight. When they saw Young and her team in their military armor, the aliens' light dimmed with fear. Through the primitive translation device, Young tried to communicate. The Zephyrian, who seemed to be their leader, stepped forward carefully. The translator struggled with his name, finally settling on Light of Dawn. "You came," the alien said, his voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "The war singers, from distant stars. We sent our cries into the void, but we did not believe anyone would answer." Young removed her helmet, showing her human face. She had scars from old battles, but her expression was kind. "We came because you asked for help. Now we need you to tell us everything about this void swarm. How do we fight them?" The alien's light patterns shifted in what could only be confusion. "Fight? We do not know this word." The reconnaissance drones had been gone for 6 hours, pushing deep into Zephyrian space to get humanity's first look at their enemy. When they finally returned with their data, the bridge of the Defiant fell completely silent. Every officer and crew member stared at the main display in horror. The void. Swarm ships were like nothing in human military databases. They weren't built, they looked grown, like massive tumors floating through space. Each vessel pulsed with dark energy that seemed to absorb light around it, creating holes in the starfield itself. The largest ships were over 10 kilometers long, their surfaces covered in what looked like breathing organic tissue, mixed with twisted metal. But the worst part wasn't the big ships. Surrounding each massive vessel were clouds of smaller creatures that moved through space like living metal. They swarmed around their parent ships like antibodies protecting a virus, constantly shifting and flowing in patterns that hurt to watch. "Dear God," whispered Ensign Ko, the youngest officer on the bridge. "Those aren't ships, they're alive." Intelligence Officer Ree pulled up the analysis data with shaking hands. 300 major vessels, Admiral, maybe 10,000 of the smaller hunter units. The computer analysis shows they're not just alive, they're learning. Each engagement makes them smarter, stronger. They consume matter from destroyed worlds and use it to build more of themselves. Captain Han, who had fought in the brutal Mars conflicts, ran his hand through his gray hair. "I've seen a lot of ugly things in my time, but this is different. These things have been rolling over civilizations for thousands of years. Every species they've met has tried to fight them like a normal enemy. That's why they all lost." Lieutenant Shin brought up tactical projections showing the swarm's path through Zephyrian space. "Sir, they've already consumed 7 worlds completely. Based on their movement pattern, they're heading straight for the Zephyrian homeworld. If we're going to make a stand, that's where it has to be." Admiral Park stood slowly, her face grim but determined. "Then that's where we'll meet them. Signal all ships, full combat readiness. Load every weapon we have. This isn't going to be like any battle we've ever fought." She looked around at her officers, seeing fear but also resolve in their faces. These things have never fought humans before. They don't know what happens when you threaten something we've decided to protect. Time to give them their first lesson. The fleet began preparing for what might be humanity's first and last interstellar war. The attack came from nowhere. One moment the human fleet was in formation around the refugee convoy, and the next moment space itself seemed to tear open. 3 void swarm scout ships materialized like living nightmares, their organic hulls pulsing with dark energy as they immediately opened fire. Captain Wu barely had time to shout orders before the first barrage hit his destroyer, Hurricane. The alien weapons weren't energy beams or missiles like humans expected. Instead, they fired living projectiles that writhed through space like angry snakes, each one designed to burrow through hull plating and consume a ship from the inside. The organic rounds slammed into Hurricane's armored sides with bone-shaking impacts. Any Zephyrian vessel would have been torn apart instantly, but Hurricane had been built in Earth's shipyards, designed to survive asteroid impacts, solar flares, and the general hostility of humanity's home system. The ship shuddered and groaned, but its triple-layered hull held firm. "Damage report," Wu shouted over the alarms. "Hull breach on Deck 7, but the emergency barriers held. "We're still in the fight, sir. All batteries, open fire." Hurricane's weapons lit up the darkness. Nuclear-tipped missiles streaked toward the swarm scouts, while particle beam cannons carved glowing lines across their hulls. The aliens had never faced weapons designed by a species that had spent centuries perfecting the art of killing. But what happened next shocked the Void Swarm more than human firepower ever could. Ensign Na's fighter had taken a direct hit, her small craft spinning, out of control with engines failing. Any rational pilot would have ejected or tried to limp back to the fleet. Instead, Na did something the swarm had never encountered in millennia of conquest. She turned her dying fighter directly toward the nearest scout ship and pushed her engines to maximum power. "Na, what are you doing?" Captain Wu screamed over the com. "Making sure they remember us," she replied calmly, just before her fighter smashed into the alien ship's central mass. Both vessels disappeared in a brilliant explosion. From the refugee fleet, gentle light of Dawn's horrified voice came across the communications channel. "This is impossible. She destroyed herself to damage the enemy. Why would any being choose death?" Major Yoon's answer came as his marine boarding pods launched toward the remaining damaged scout ships. "Because some things are worth dying for, and protecting the innocent is one of them." The first battle between humans and the Void Swarm lasted only minutes, but it changed everything. The aliens had finally met a species as ruthless as they were. The final battle began as Zephyr Prime hung in space like a dying jewel. The Zephyrian homeworld was wrapped in shimmering auroral-like energy shields that had protected it for thousands of years. But now those ancient defenses flickered and sparked as the Void Swarm pressed their attack. Hundreds of massive bioships surrounded the planet like hungry predators, circling wounded prey. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of the Defiant, watching her tactical display with grim determination. The odds were impossible. 300 swarm vessels against what remained of her fleet, barely 100 human ships after the running battles of the past week. Any sane military commander would have retreated. "Commander So," Park ordered, without hesitation, "take half the fleet and get every civilian off that planet. I don't care if you have to strap them to the hull. No one gets left behind." "Admiral, that leaves us outnumbered 6-1, So protested. "Then we better make every shot count," Park replied. "All remaining ships, form up on the Defiant. We're going straight down their throat." Captain Lee felt the ship shudder as they accelerated toward the heart of the swarm formation. Around them, organic nightmares swarmed like living asteroids, their twisted hulls pulsing with dark energy. The Defiant's weapons blazed continuously, nuclear missiles and particle beams carving paths through the alien mass. Boarding pods away. Major Ah's voice crackled over the comm as his Marines launched toward damaged swarm vessels. What they found inside was worse than any nightmare. The ships weren't just alive, they were trying to digest the human borders. Marines fought through corridors that bled and breathed, planting nuclear charges while alien organisms tried to dissolve their armor. The battle raged for hours. Human ships died in brilliant explosions, their crews fighting to the last breath. The destroyer Courage rammed a swarm command ship after her engines failed. The cruiser Relentless held her position covering an evacuation convoy even as alien boarding pods tore through her hull. By the time the last swarm vessel fell silent, half the human fleet was gone. 50 ships and 25,000 personnel had died in the space around Zephyr Prime, but they had won something the galaxy had never seen before. As rescue ships pulled survivors from the wreckage, gentle light of dawn transmitted from the refugee fleet. "Why?" he asked simply. "Why did your people die for us?" Admiral Park's answer would be remembered across the galaxy for centuries. "Because that's what humans do. We stand up for those who can't stand up for themselves." 3 months had passed since the last Void Swarm ship died in the fires of a collapsing star. The combined human and Zephyrian fleet now traveled together toward Earth's solar system. their ships moving in formation like old friends rather than recent allies. The journey home had given both species time to heal, to learn, and to understand what they had accomplished together. Admiral Park walked through the refugee sections of the Defiant almost daily, watching as Zephyrian children played games with human Marines. The language barriers had mostly disappeared thanks to improved translation software, and something beautiful was happening. Two completely different species were becoming friends. The Zephyrians had spent the journey, sharing their knowledge freely. Their crystal-growing technology could revolutionize human construction. Their energy manipulation techniques promised cleaner power sources. Most importantly, their peaceful philosophy was already changing how some humans thought about conflict resolution. "Admiral Park," came a gentle voice behind her. She turned to see gentle light of dawn approaching, his bioluminescent skin glowing with steady, bright patterns that she had learned indicated happiness and contentment. "Your people saved us," he said, using the improved translation system that now captured the musical quality of Zephyrian speech. "We offer our technology, our knowledge, our friendship. But more than material things, we offer something else to the galaxy. We will tell every species we meet that humans do not fight for conquest or wealth. You fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Park nodded, feeling the weight of what that meant. Earth's first contact with alien civilization hadn't been about trade agreements or territorial negotiations. It had been about standing up to bullies on a galactic scale. "Admiral," called Lieutenant Shin from the bridge. "Long-range sensors are picking up multiple ships at the edge of our solar system." On the main display, dozens of unknown vessels waited near the outer planets. They came from at least 12 different species, all watching to see how humanity's first interstellar war would end. Word had spread across the galaxy about the Deathworlders, who had defeated the unstoppable Void Swarm. As Earth grew larger on the view screen, Park smiled at her Zephyrian friend. "Welcome to the neighborhood. Just warning you, the gravity here might take some getting used to." Gentle light of dawn's patterns shifted to what Park recognized as laughter. "We will adapt. After all, we learned from the best teachers in the galaxy." Humanity had announced itself to the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians. The galaxy would never be the same.